together and organizing this and all the work she's doing to help community and CZU Fire families recover. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brittany.
Hello, everyone. Again, thank you for being here to go over our Recover California programs. Just give me 1 second. So we are recording, just so you're aware, this meeting. I'm going to go through our presentation overview and on our mitigation program, and then we'll go into a Q&A. And after that, we will go through an application training overview as well, and that's a recorded video. So I am Brittany Halfhide, and I'm an outreach associate. I have Fatima Juarez as well on our call, and Jennifer Velasquez is also on this call, as well as our interpreter. So there is Spanish available to everyone if they would like to listen to that. And with that, I'm going to start the presentation. Just give me 1 moment.
And Brittany, let me jump in here very quickly just to make that announcement. Hola, buenas noches a todos. Gracias por acompañarnos. Tenemos interpretación en español esta noche. Si desea escuchar en español, puede escuchar en español seleccionando el botón de Interpretation que queda colocado en la barra de abajo de Zoom y haga clic en el botón de Spanish. Muchas gracias. Go ahead, Brittany.
Thank you. Just 1 moment. All right, and I'm just going to make sure that we have this recording going. All right, so these are our housing programs for 2020 for our mitigation and wildfire mitigation retrofits program for Recover California. And these are federal disaster recovery funds for qualifying 2020 wildfire disasters. And this program is managed by the California Department of Housing and Community Development, and it includes 2 main program types, but we will focus on our mitigation program today. So a little background on the program. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has allocated $231.2 million in federal CDBG-DR funds, and those are Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funds to assist homeowners impacted by disasters that took place between August and November of 2020. And again, the 2 housing programs are owner-occupied rehabilitation and reconstruction, or OOR, and those are for damaged main dwellings, and our owner-occupied wildfire mitigation retrofits, or OOM, for homes that did not sustain damage but have fire mitigation needs on their property. So these are 2 separate programs for 2 different populations and their needs, and these funds can only be expended within federally declared disaster areas for 2020. So a list of the counties are here, but I'll talk about this a little bit later in the presentation. And I do mention the OR program, but we're going to be focusing on our mitigation program tonight. So that the OOM program, that's our owner-occupied wildfire mitigation retrofits program. And this program offers grants of up to $50,000 to homeowners who have disaster mitigation needs on their property. And that important distinction for the program is that it does not have to have sustained damage in the disaster, but be located in an eligible county and must have home hardening or defensible needs currently on the property. And some of those activities that are included in this program are those that increase the level of protection against wildfire, including defensible space and home hardening. So in order to be eligible for the OOR program, an applicant must have owned and occupied the home in question as it being their primary resident at the time of the disaster. It must be located in a HUD designated eligible county. The homeowner must be eligible for federal benefits, and that's meaning that they're a U.S. citizen or a qualified alien. The home must be a titled single-family dwelling or manufactured housing unit on a fixed pad. So some of the non-eligible properties would be outbuildings or secondary homes, rental properties, RVs, condos, multifamily structures that would not be included in the program or eligible. Another aspect of eligibility is that a homeowner must be current on their property taxes. And this is an important eligibility criteria that the household income must be 80% or less of the area median income for the specific county. And that's determined by HUD and their income limits. So a way in which the award is determined for mitigation program is estimating the cost of the remaining work and then subtracting what's considered DOB, and that's a duplication of benefits. And this would be things that were funds and that were received for the purpose of home hardening and our mitigation measures from sources such as insurance, government, charity, and case managers do work closely throughout the eligibility process to work with individuals to determine what exactly would be considered DOB. And then these two amounts can equal up to $50,000. So the program does acknowledge that $50,000 may not be enough for all necessary activities. So it has developed a level of importance policy and procedures, level 1 being the highest priority, going down to 2 and 3 and as such for those mitigation items. And I'll go into what those specific ones are. So for level 1, these activities that take the highest priority would be placing pea gravel under home, creating fire resistant skirting around home, enclosing porches and decks with amber resistant skirting, using fire retardant paint on porches and decks, stump grinding, hazardous tree removal, and creating a defensible space landscaping. And then on to level 2, some of these activities would include enclosing gutter elements, installing metal gutters and gutter guards, installing fiber cement exterior sliding, and replacing roofing with Class A asphalt shingles and fire-resistant roofing material. Lastly, if that $50,000 hasn't been exhausted, then some of those activities would be installing metal exterior doors, including the garage door, and installing dual paned windows. So a little bit about our program process and how to apply. So applications for 2020 housing programs are available on a portal called Neighborly, and it's located on our Recover California website. Case managers are available during that entire application process and submitting required documentation. There's also FAQ sheets and what exactly would be considered DOB on our website as well. There are a variety of ways in which someone could complete the application. You can do that on the Neighborly portal on the website or over the phone with a case manager. We do have a PDF paper application and paper applications available that can be mailed to an applicant as well. So this slide is a little bit of the timeline and what an applicant can expect from the OOM program. So after eligibility is determined, the construction management team will complete the assessment and create a scope of work for the mitigation activities. Then they'll complete and inspect the work as defined in the scope. And it is important to note that from the point of eligibility to the construction completion or the mitigation completion can take up to a year. And I do want to mention that the program does have its own construction management team. So grant awards aren't given to the applicant directly, but given to the construction management team that is procured by HCD. So with that, I want to open it up to some questions.
I can start. I mean, and maybe we can remind people they can type in questions into the chat, right? Or raise their hand. Did somebody have a hand raised, a real hand? Was that Fred? Or-
Yes, I do.
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear me? Hi, everyone. So, my question has to do with the median income requirement. I just looked at the list and I don't know, I think my family is kind of like just on the border. What year income does the program look at?
So Etta can correct me, but I believe it's the current year. Is that
The
correct?
most recent, or I mean, is it
Most recent
2023?
We will go with the most current year.
So 2023 in this case.
Correct.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Okay. Um, and another question is, you said that there's a building team that receives the funds, and so that building team carries out the work. Is that right?
Correct. They do everything from start to finish for the mitigation, and also for our rehabilitation program, they do everything from start to finish as well.
Okay, and it sounds like the whole I don't know if the whole county of Santa Cruz is covered. We live in Felton, and we weren't the fire came somewhat close, but it didn't directly affect our property. But that's still a qualifying.
Yes, for the
area, is that
mitigation
right?
program, as long as you're in the county, you would
Mhm.
qualify for the program or be eligible for the program. You don't have to be in the burn scar at all.
Okay, thank you. So I guess the details about the income is something that I could talk to an application helper like on the phone or something.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage you to speak with a case manager, because I know there are exceptions and things that they consider during that. So that's not a concrete number. It's
Mhm.
just one that they start off of.
Okay, well, thank you. That's really helpful to know. I appreciate it.
No problem. Tanya?
Yeah, so I just wanted to go back to the area median income as well. When I read the program sort of procedural guide, it seemed that there's low to moderate income and that there's a certain percentage that goes up to the 120% of AMI that will be allowed as a small percentage. The majority will be 80%, below 80% of the area median income. Can you please clarify that?
So, Ada, you can correct me again if I'm wrong, but I believe that the area median income of individuals of 80% or lower gets priority and prioritized. They get a priority to the program. And then if there is still available funding, then it goes to the next tier of up to 120. But if you do make more than 120, at no point do they open it up to individuals that make more than 120% of the area median income. Does that clarify it at all?
That's correct.
There are also a few questions in the chat. So we have Chris Smith. If we're currently in the process of rebuilding a destroyed property, would it be eligible for possible mitigation steps after completion? Is it the first question? And I'm not sure if this is correct, Eda. It would be eligible for the OOM as long as there are funds available by the time they're done completing their reconstruction, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And I think Dave already answered Susan. Does this include South County? And yes, it does. All residents are eligible for that. And they do not have to be from a burn scar or the disaster. It could just need mitigation needs. So the last question is, people are only qualified if they had damage from several years ago and not from this month's storm. So like I said, they do not have to be a part of the disaster. It just has to be within the county where the disaster happened. But I'm not sure, Eda, if it would still qualify if they're referring to current storms that just happened.
So the disaster would have to take place of the year that we are funding for.
The damage would have to take place. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Well, let me restate the question and maybe make sure we're clear. Right, so all county residents are eligible for the owner occupied mitigation. The program is for wildfire resilience programming, like you showed in the presentation, Brittany. So any resident anywhere in the county that has wildfire mitigation activities that fall into the eligible list could apply for the program.
Yes,
Yes.
but you'd have to make sure that you owned the property pre-fire to
Right.
the
Okay.
fire,
So
as long as you had owned it
yeah, as long as you had owned it in
and
2020
occupied it. Correct,
and occupied it as your primary residence in 2020. Okay.
correct.
We have one more question. Can you tell us more about cleanup of debris as a result of the CZU, such as dead fallen trees? Level 1, how much of the property does this include? Some of the property or all of the property?
Etta, do you want to take that, or?
I'm not too sure on the property itself. Do you want to answer that?
So my understanding is that it is in the defensible space area. Is if you had fallen trees in the defensible space area, they would help with the debris clearance of that or any hazardous material in that defensible space. But we have homeowners that own multiple acres, but it's only within that defensible space. And it's WUI code, so it would be 100 feet, I believe, but I need to get that confirmed. The
Yeah.
exact number of feet.
Yeah, we could write down the question and come back with the exact answer for that as well.
Do we have any other questions on the mitigation
you-
program?
Could you elaborate a little bit on, for us in our rural community, in our construction resource impacted community, it'd be helpful for us to understand who's doing the work. So you have a construction management company. Where are they based? How do they scale? Are they working throughout the state? And then when it comes to actually doing the work on people's property, are they subcontracting to local tree companies if it's defensible space work? Are they subcontracting to other entities, or are they doing the work themselves? I think that would be helpful to get a little bit more detail on.
So they do subcontract work, especially for the mitigation program. I believe that our construction management team is based out of Texas, and it's SLS is the name of the company that we work most frequently with. Beyond that, I don't have any more details of who they subcontract or how they do that necessarily, but this is a relatively new program. We released this program specifically in October, I believe, and we didn't have this program for 17 and 18, so they're kind of still learning and getting their vendors as well, because a lot of applicants are in the early stages still. And so I think we'll know more in the next couple months or so.
And then on that it may be in the figure you articulated, but should any of the activities that folks want to get done through this program require permits from the county or even a jurisdiction, right? So if you're City of Santa Cruz resident or City of Scotts Valley resident, and you're in the WUI, especially, you can access this program. But if you need permits, how is that handled?
So that would be, within the scope of the work. And so the construction management team would do that themselves. They would do that directly. So the homeowner basically is hands off once they're, become eligible for the program and they receive the grant award. Basically, it's hands off at that point, and they're just talking to their case manager about, the status of where they're at in the rest of the construction, if it's or construction, if it's rehabilitation and reconstruction, or where they're at in the process of mitigation.
Let me just add, Carrie, I see your hand. One follow-up though on that is if it's an up to $50,000 grant award for mitigation activities, is that just the construction costs, or is there project management costs that if it takes the construction management team staff hours to procure a permit, is that taking away from the total award to do the physical improvement work?
That's beyond my knowledge, but I can definitely get that answered for you and have our construction management team answer that.
That'd be great. Thanks. Sorry, Carrie, go ahead.
It's okay. I'm just thinking, someone who lives in Texas is a tree cutter, isn't gonna have a clue with our giant firs and redwoods up here. It takes people who are used to them, and a lot of them won't even touch some of the trees. So I don't know about Texas, but I don't think they have trees like ours.
Yeah, and like I was mentioning, they do subcontract, so they might do that in the case that they're not familiar with how to handle a tree like that, or if they're having, you know, reservations about, you know, where to go, they most likely will subcontract for something like that they're not familiar with. Do we have any other questions?
I put my question in the chat. You know, the information went by really quickly. So could we just go over the two priorities and the list of qualifying activities? Again, could we look at the visuals, please?
You'd like to see the slide for the level of what the activities are?
Yes, please.
Yeah, no problem. Let me find it for you. So on the level 1, that would be pea gravel under the home, fire resistant skirting, enclosing porches and decks with metal mesh and ember resistant skirting, the fire retardant paint on the porches and decks, the stump grinding, and the landscaping as well, and the hazardous tree removal, and creating that defensible space. So again, that's the priority is level 1, and then level 2, enclosing gutter elements with fire resistant material, installing metal gutters and gutter guards, fiber cement exterior of this trim and paint, and then the roofing materials to be fire resistant. And then lastly, the metal exterior doors, metal garage doors, and the dual pane windows. Is that helpful?
Yes, that is very helpful. It's interesting that roofing is in the second category, but if like that is your main focus, I mean, I guess it just goes in the application and you
Right.
see, right?
Right. It's all case by case, and they go out and inspect the property and see what
good.
each will need prior to I think that is prior to getting the grant award. If I'm correct in my timeline. And then
Okay.
now we have a application training video. It is 40 minutes long for the full version, but I believe that we can do the shorter one if you'd like, and that's 15, but it's really up to everyone. You're welcome to jump off too if you don't want to see the entire video, but I will go ahead and start that after we get Tanya's question answered.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify, because you're talking about zone 0 and zone 1, which are the defensible space zones around your house. So I wanted to clarify that zone 0 extends 0 to 5 feet from the structures, and zone 1 begins at 5 feet and extends 30 feet away from your structures. So that's just so you understand what those zones mean. And then I did hear Dave say homes in the WUI, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows that you don't need to be in the WUI to apply for this or be awarded this grant. You can live smack dab right in the middle of Santa Cruz County, Santa Cruz City, or in Seabright, or anywhere in the county in Watsonville, and you can qualify for this grant. So obviously, we're promoting it specifically in the WUI because we know that that's where wildfire is likely to strike, but it is anybody living anywhere in Santa Cruz County are eligible to apply for it.
Great, thank you, Tanya, for that. So I will go ahead and get that training video started.
To start a new application from the Recover California Housing Programs application portal, You'll select the blue Start Application button under Action. It'll ask you to enter your first name and last name using the following format. From here, it'll take you to the Recover California Housing Program's Rehabilitation, Reconstruction, and Mitigation application. It's also going to generate a unique case ID right below. This will be your case ID throughout the application process. From here, you will click to continue, and it'll take you through the various application steps from program overview all the way through submit. Appeal and award will be locked at this time, as this is just the general application. You can view users and add any additional user by selecting the add user. This is great if you want to have multiple household members have access, such as a co-owner, or if you may have a communication designee assisting you with the application, you can add them here by clicking add user. It'll ask for the additional household member's email address or the communication designee's email address. So we'll start at the very top, which is program overview. The program overview will provide applicants with information on the program, who can apply for the assistance, what they can expect from the programs, the different projects between rehabilitation and reconstruction, as well as the mitigation retrofit project. It'll also provide useful links for more information. We do encourage all applicants to review the program resources on the Recover California program website, including the policies and procedures for the disaster year that they are applying to. Once the applicant has reviewed the program overview, they will click Complete and Continue and move to Application Page A, Preliminary Eligibility. There are 5 questions on this page. The applicant will select all 5 questions. So the first is, how did you hear about the Recover California housing programs? And it'll include a drop-down list. The next is if the property that you're applying for was located within one of the most impacted and distressed counties. These counties are eligible for assistance under the program. If you select my property is not located in a listed county, you will get a stop sign indicating you are not eligible for the program at this time. The next question is, at the time of the disaster, did you own the applicable property and occupy it as your primary residence, or did you rent it out? These fields are conditional. So by selecting yes, it pops up with an additional question here. Was the applicable property a single family residence, including a mobile home or manufactured housing unit? Selecting different answers will provide different responses. So if you select no here, it'll indicate a stop sign here that you're not eligible because the property was not a single family residence. This would refer to eligible structure types located in our policies and procedures. Lastly, what year are you applying for? You'll select the disaster year, and then you'll select the type of project you're applying for. There is a list of 6 eligible projects: reconstruction, rehabilitation, as well as our mitigation retrofits programs. It's important to remember that the application that you're completing here in Neighborly is the same application no matter which project type you're applying for. Once this has been completed, the applicant will select Complete and Continue. From here, this will take the applicant to step B, Contact Information. This is where the applicant will enter their contact information. It is important to note that this first section is for the primary applicant. So this needs to be somebody who's listed on the grant deed or property tax records, someone who has ownership of the property. This will be the primary applicant. The applicant will also have the ability to enter their preferred method of communication, as well as their preferred language. applicants are able to add a power of attorney. This is again, once again, a conditional field. So if the applicant selects yes, it'll ask for the contact information for the power of attorney. If the applicant has a communication designee, somebody that they want to designate as a third party to receive information about their program status, they can select yes or no here. Once again, selecting yes would be a conditional field, and then the applicant would be able to provide contact information for their communication designee. A communication designee form is required. By selecting yes, it will automatically populate this form to be able to be downloaded, print, and sign. All forms for the program must be signed physically in blue ink. That is one thing that applicants should be made aware of, that any form sent back that requires a signature should be signed in blue ink. Step B, contact information, also allows applicants to provide co-owner information. If there is a co-owner, it will provide additional fields for the applicant to list the first and last name, as well as contact information for the co-owner. It is important that every co-owner be listed on the application. So if there are multiple owners on a deed, they would all need to be listed on the application. This is the same in the instance of a trust. If the applicant has a property that is that the trust is on the ownership documentation, the trust must be listed as a co-owner and an applicant on the application. There is also other owners. So B11 asks if there are other owners who are not in the application. This is for non-resident co-owners. So if there's an owner on the grant deed who does not reside in the property, they will need to be added as another owner on the application. The applicant, once completed, will click complete and continue to move to the next application page. Now you'll see here, because required fields were not entered, the applicant cannot move forward in the process. So these all must be filled out. This is a requirement for the program. So I'll quickly fill these out here in a test environment. And now we can move on. Application page C is for the applicant to list all household members. It is important that the applicant note that this is for as of today. So this is the time they are submitting the application. All household members who reside or who will be residing in the property should be added to the application. You'll click to add a new household member. The first will always be the primary household member, and this will be duplicative of what was entered in step A, preliminary eligibility. So the primary applicant must enter themselves as the primary household member. The applicant will enter their name, middle name, if applicable. This is not a required field, and their last name, birth date. And then there's some demographics here that they'll complete as well too. There is an option for decline to answer. And then the relationship. So applicants who are entering themselves as the primary household will select self, and then there's a drop-down list for additional. And this is important that the applicant enters every household member . Once all household members are added, complete and continue and move to step D, income. Step D income starts with a conditional question. Is the applicable property a home that you own and will rent out when reconstructed? And then select no if you are a landlord applying for mitigation retrofits program. So if it is a property that they own and rent out, we'll select yes. There's additional questions. If no, it will take them to primary applicant name. So once again, this will be the primary applicant who's entered first on this page. Relation, and then income verification source. So we understand there are a variety of income sources. So there's a drop-down list here. If the applicant receives multiple income sources, they will select the multiple income source from the drop-down list. If an applicant had filed their previous year's tax return, they can select the 1040 tax return. If they receive employment income through pay stubs, there's an option for wages, all sorts of income source options here. Select what is the best fit for the applicant. The amount per year, this is going to be any information they have, if they've annualized their income, if they have tax records to verify their annual household income, or the best estimate of what the annual income will be. D1E will ask if the income will stay the same for the next 12 months. If an applicant is on a fixed income, say they only receive Social Security income or a pension, or if there will be no changes to their employment income, they can select yes. If there will be changes, the applicant will need to indicate that it will not stay the same. Step D also has a section for the applicant to upload their primary income source documentation. The program is going to always require the previous year's filed tax return if available. We do know applicants aren't always required to file taxes, whether they are not required to, they've requested an extension, or they just haven't filed currently at this time. So then they can provide other income source documentation. If an applicant has any questions or doesn't have the documentation readily available, this is not a required field to submit the application. A case manager will be assigned to the applicant to request and collect income documentation at a later date during the application intake review once the application has been submitted. We always do want to encourage applicants to submit as much documentation on the front end as they can, but we also don't want to make a barrier for them to submit the application. This can be collected after the application has been submitted. D2 will ask if there's a second household member. So it's important to note any household member listed in step C should be accounted for in step D income, even if they don't have income. So if their income source is zero income, that's okay. They're still going to be accounted for here on step D. So we'll review that scenario. Take an adult child here, income source. So if they don't have any income, they'll select zero income. This will then conditionally add the field, please download, complete, and upload the zero income certification form. So this would be the income source documentation for zero income. The applicant will enter their case ID, damaged property address, the household member name, relation to the head of household, date of birth, indicate that they are either the primary applicant or not the primary applicant, if they're a co-owner, and they'll check this box to indicate that they are certifying zero income and provide a brief narrative of how they plan to pay for their living expenses. And then they will read the acknowledgement here, sign, and date the document. Once again, these documents need to be signed in blue ink. This document can be uploaded to the application for the income source documentation. This will be completed for all household members. Once income is complete, the applicant will move on to the applicant will move on to step E, property. This is where the applicant will provide basic property information. So the property type, whether it's a single family home, a mobile home, or a manufactured home. The property address for the property that will be rehabilitated, reconstructed, or mitigated. The applicant will select the number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, and list the conditioned square footage. This question comes up sometimes. Conditioned square footage is going to be approved square footage from the home. It's going to exclude any garages, any covered awnings, any unpermitted additions to the home. So what is going to be considered conditioned square footage here is going to be what is on file with the building permit within the county. This can be the best guess the applicant has. If they don't have the exact amount, the program will verify through third-party sources, property type, and square footage, and the year the home was built. Question E7 is going to list if the applicable property is subject to a homeowners association or any other special restrictions. E8, do you currently occupy a home that is not the residence you're trying to get assistance for? If they select yes, it'll have a conditional field. Do they own or rent the property? If they own, it's going to ask for the purchase date of this additional home. If they rent, it will continue on to E9. If the applicable property is their primary residence. Have you or a tenant been displaced from the applicable property due to damage caused by a disaster? Yes or no? If yes, they're going to explain their current living situation. We know a lot of applicants are renting, have moved in with family members, might be still residing on the damaged property in RV or fifth wheel. So the applicant will just provide a brief explanation here of their current living situation. The applicant will fill out the remaining questions regarding the property. E14 is going to also highlight if there's any other owners on the deed. So this information should be captured in step B, contact information for other co-owners or co-applicants. So the applicant will list those names here as well too. So this will be a space to provide the names of all owners on the deed, and then also any entities such as a trust. E15 will ask if there's any leases, liens, or rental agreements, or easements, or deed restrictions affecting the property, yes or no. If yes, a conditional field to explain that situation will be generated. And then if the applicable property has a mortgage, this is another conditional field. If yes, the applicant can upload an active mortgage statement. We do require a current mortgage statement. This will also meet some of our eligibility documentation requirements, such as proof of current ownership. So this documentation will be very useful for the eligibility team. They have the ability to upload the file here. Once again, this is not a required field to upload the document at the time of application submission. We can collect that on the back end, but if the applicant has access to it and we can upload it at the time of submission, it'll definitely speed up the intake review process. Step F will be FEMA and Small Business Administration assistance. The applicant will enter if they received any disaster-related assistance from FEMA or from the SBA. So these are conditional fields. If they select yes, it'll ask for the amount that was approved, the amount that the applicant has received to date, and the FEMA registration number. It'll also allow the applicant to provide their FEMA award or denial letter. This will be super helpful for our eligibility team as well as their intake team. And a FEMA letter can meet several eligibility requirements. So if an applicant has that available on hand, it'd be great to upload to the application. If the applicant needs assistance getting a FEMA award letter, we can also assist with that through a case manager. They'll need to log onto their account and they can download it from FEMA. Conditional fields here as well too. If an applicant received a Small Business Administration loan, how much was approved, how much was received to date, application number, loan number, and then the status of their loan. So if they did receive a loan, are they making their payments? Payment is agreed upon. They didn't accept the award. They're not using the loan amount. So these are all great things that the eligibility and intake team will be collecting. Step G, insurance and other assistance. This will ask the applicant if they've received any insurance from their homeowner's policy at the time of the disaster. And also if they've received any other disaster-related funding for rehabilitation, reconstruction, or mitigation to their home. Once again, conditional fields here. So if an applicant selects yes, we'll ask for the name of their insurance policy provider. They can also upload a copy of their homeowner's insurance. It's important to note here that the program is going to be looking for the policy from the period of the time of the disaster. So typically we're going to be looking for a declarations page. If an applicant doesn't have this on hand, they can most likely contact their insurance provider and request a copy from the policy during the disaster year. And then also if an applicant filed a claim with their homeowner's insurance policy, they'll indicate that here. If yes, how much they received from that claim. And then there's also a question if they are involved or in an appeal or a lawsuit with their insurance company. If an applicant did file a claim, one of the eligibility requirements for our program is proof of damage. Typically, if a claim was filed and an applicant did receive money from their insurance company, they'll have a proof of loss statement. This is another great thing an applicant can request from their insurance provider if they don't already have it on hand. The proof of loss documentation will verify damage, and it'll also help our duplication of benefits team review the amount of assistance they received for the purpose of reconstruction, rehabilitation, or mitigation. G2, as I mentioned, will be other disaster-related assistance. So this will be things like Cal Home, any type of nonprofit assistance. And it's important that this information is for the purpose of rehabilitation, repair, or mitigation. So if an applicant received funding from a nonprofit organization to replace personal property, clothes, for example, that's not going to be a duplication of benefits for this program because we're looking at funding that was given for the explicit purpose of rehabilitation, reconstruction, or mitigation. It's a conditional field as well here. So if they do select yes, what was the source of assistance and how much of assistance received? And then we're going to look for evidence of that assistance received. This is something the duplication benefits team is going to want to review to see if it's duplicative assistance. So great documentation would be award letters, approval letters, if they have a copy of a check if they received money for this assistance, receipts, invoices, those types of things will be great here. If that's not available, we can look at maybe, emails, confirmations of the amount that was given, those types of documentation. Step H is exclusions. So the applicant will answer the following question. If they spent money on any of the following as a result of the disaster, there is a list here for debris removal, repairs, theft or vandalism to the property or the reconstruction of the property, legal fees, if they purchased a vehicle. Some applicants we see, use money to purchase a van or possibly a fifth wheel after the disaster to use as housing, temporary housing costs, so rent, forced mortgage payoff if they did have to pay their mortgage off with insurance proceeds, and then contractor fraud. So the applicant will select any of these that are applicable to their situation, and then also describe the paid expenses. And then H3 is going to have them upload the evidence of these paid receipts. So it's really important that applicants provide documentation for this. Receipts are always great. Invoices that maybe show paid on them with a timestamp. You know, if it's a vehicle, we could look at, you know, the pink slip, bill of sale, those types of documents. For temporary housing cost, a rental agreement's not going to be sufficient. We're going to need to see, you know, transactions. So if they paid rent via check, if it was electronic payment, something that kind of shows those transaction history and payments. Once this step is completed, the applicant will move to step I, disability. This will allow the applicant to report any disabilities that would require specific design features in the home. So if we are doing repairs or reconstruction on the property, it'll allow the applicant to kind of notify us on the front end. And this is important because once an applicant has made a home selection, changes after the fact, you know, aren't permitted. So we want to have this information on the front end. So when they are meeting with the construction and management team, this information's shared already, and we can have discussions around any additional type of design features that they may need. So there's a list here. If the applicant selects other, they can type and specify other accommodations they may need. But a lot of these are the standard ones. So a home without, you know, carpet flooring, if they need any type of grab bars in the shower, those types of things. And then I2 is if they require reasonable accommodation for a disability when communicating with the program. So if they select yes, they can list what type of reasonable accommodations they're requesting. Application page J is going to be our first of 3 program forms that are required to be reviewed and signed by the applicant. So the first is the rights of entry and authorization agreement. We do encourage the applicant to read through the entire agreement before selecting and acknowledging. Once they've read through and they've agreed to all the check marks, they'll sign the document by clicking here to electronically sign. If an applicant has any questions on a form, they are able to contact the program to have any of those questions answered. The right of entry form here is designed to let the applicant know that there will be some activities on the property, construction and inspection related. And so the applicant is authorizing the program to have those inspections take place on the property. In addition, you know, the site ready, no interference and removal of obstructions. This is for when construction has begun on the property. And so we do encourage the applicant to read through and make sure they fully understand these forms. Once they've signed, they'll
Uh-oh, I'm not sure what happened there. Let me see if I can get it started again.
Well, maybe Brittany, I think, I mean, it's
Yeah.
knowing it's a video, maybe if we're able to get the 15-minute version and the full version links so that we can share those out to community.
Yeah, I can send you the exact file of the entire application overview. So I'll send you that entire thing, and then you'll get this meeting as well, so you can look at the chat if you need to, or review the presentation.
All right. It looks like there might be a bunch of new messages. I don't know who wants to scroll through and read those out or review those. The only other quick question I had on the registration platform and interface is whether that whole thing is translated into Spanish. So Fatima, it seems like you nodded, and so I didn't know.
So we do have the application in Spanish, but we are working on the Spanish version of the webinar for the application process.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, I'll mute and You guys can go to questions in the chat maybe.
Yeah, I think the only one that's not answered is getting on a mailing list to get the video of the meeting. I can send it to you. I know that who was a participant in the meeting, so I can send that to everyone in the meeting as well as Tanya and everyone. Any other questions?
I'll go ahead and post it on the long-term recovery group Facebook page as well, or so what I'll do right now is I'll post a link to the Facebook page in the chat. So, you know, I'm just always encouraging everyone to just like us and follow us. Because, you know, this type of information, these types of community meetings and grants, opportunities that are coming to our community, I'll make sure to always share them. So it's just a good idea to follow us and sort of keep tabs on what we're up to.
Great, that'd be very helpful. Do we have any other questions before we end this meeting? I do appreciate everyone being here again and going through the training video. I know it's lengthy.
I had a quick question about Spanish accessibility of the training videos, and also if you have posted this sort of webinar in Spanish, because I'll have access to the English version when you send me the video. I don't know if anybody utilized the Spanish translation, but I do know we have a large Spanish-speaking community, particularly in South County, and I want to make sure this is accessible to everyone. So if you have, a presentation like this for a Spanish-speaking community elsewhere in California, that would be helpful. And then also the training links, the two different training links in Spanish as well. I would really appreciate that.
Yeah, so we're working on the training video and translating it to Spanish, but we do have our presentation overview webinar already completed, and I can get you that.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Could I also just clarify? So I put a question in the chat when you were talking about the FEMA and SBA loans, and I just want to make sure that I understand correctly that if somebody was not impacted by the 2020 CZU fire, but they were impacted by the 2023 atmospheric rivers, and they received either FEMA funding or applied and received an SBA loan from those disasters, that is still considered duplication of benefits under this grant.
So my understanding is that if FEMA has specifically stated that it was for the purpose of defensible space and mitigation, that yes, it would be considered DOB, even if it was after the fact, because it's been received for that purpose. And we can't duplicate the benefits in that regard. But if I'm incorrect, Etta, you can correct me. Is that?
Nope, you're absolutely right, 100%.
Okay. So if it specifically states in the FEMA letter or FEMA award that it was for the purpose of mitigation or defensible space purposes, then yes, it would be DOB. But if it was just for, housing or personal property, then no, it would not be considered. Do you have any other questions? All right. Well, with that, I'll end the meeting. And again, thank you so much for being here tonight. And I'll get that information off to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Bye, everyone.
No
Bye.
problem.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
You too.